Hello and welcome to Answering Bart Ehrman. Today we're going to begin with chapter 1 of his book, Jesus Interrupted, and we're going to read sections from the first 6 pages. So Matthew, I'll hand over to you. And what are the sections we need to look at?
Yeah, I'll just pull out a few quotes here, and we'll reflect on them together, and we'll go through these six pages in that way. So he says on the first page, scholars of the Bible have made significant progress in understanding the Bible over the past 200 years, building on archaeological discoveries, advances in our knowledge of the ancient Hebrew and Greek languages in which the books of Scripture were originally written, and deep and penetrating historical, literary, and textual analyses. This is a massive scholarly endeavor. Yet some views of the Bible are virtually unknown among the population at large. In no small measure, this is because those of us who spend our professional lives studying the Bible have not done a good job communicating this knowledge to the general public, and because many pastors who learnt this material in seminary have, for a variety of reasons, not shared it with their parishioners once they take up positions in the church. So he goes on, this book is meant to help redress that problem. It could be seen as my attempt to let the cat out of the bag.
The cat out of the bag.
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you think, Sam?
Well, he's claiming that he's value-free, that he's simply presenting the evidence here. That's the first thing, the first impression I get from reading him.
Here's what scholars have been saying. If you're going to be a serious thinking person, you better accept what I'm presenting. Yep.
Yes. He's also doing a bit of the conspiracy theory idea. He's sort of entertaining that idea a little bit, that these ideas are out here, but, for whatever reason, people don't know the truth. So it's there, but people just don't know it. So there's that little bit of conspiracy idea that he's claiming.
It's kind of a bit of pastors in churches they're not acting with integrity in the way that Ehrman is. It's got that air to it, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. But again, he's just saying that all the scholarship's with him and that there is, a lot of evidence on his side. Now, he was talking about all the developments in archaeology and all of those types of things. I mean, I'm going to come back to that, but we're all for the developments of archaeology. In fact, there's been a lot of things in the Bible which people said didn't happen, and then archaeologists have dug it up. So I'm not sure what he's talking about, because archaeology seems to confirm the Bible. Look, I'll bring up a few of those references later on. I'm going to keep reading some other bits, though. This is on page 2. So where am I? My bit. Okay. Most of the people who are trained in Bible scholarship have been educated in theological institutions. Of course, a wide range of students head off to seminaries every year. Many of them have been involved with Bible studies through their school years, even dating back to their early childhood Sunday school classes. But they have typically approached the Bible from a devotional point of view, reading it for what it can tell them about what to believe and how to live their lives. As a rule, such students have not been interested in or exposed to what scholars have discovered about the difficulties of the Bible when it is studied from a more academic, historical perspective. I'll jump across to page 3. Such students are in for a rude awakening. Mainline Protestant seminaries in this country are notorious for challenging students' cherished beliefs about the Bible, even if these cherished beliefs are held by warm and fuzzy sense that the Bible is a wonderful guide to faith and practice to be treated with reverence and piety. These seminaries teach serious, hardcore Bible scholarship. They don't pander to piety. They are taught by scholars who are familiar with what German and English-speaking scholarship has been saying about the Bible over the past 300 years. So I'll finish there. So what comments do we want to make from that?
I think this is really important for readers to understand. This is his main contrast of the boxes within which Bible readers fit. Right, you've got
Yep.
the devotional Bible readers who believe what it says, but don't really engage with the facts about how it came to be and what scholarship has demonstrated about what's historically true. And then you've got the people who don't believe it because they take the historical facts seriously and they listen to what scholars have been saying for 300 years. And there's no middle ground. You're in one of those
Yes.
two boxes. That's his framework,
Yep.
which is pretty frustrating coming from people like yourself and myself who have gone to theological colleges that do both, that believe what the Bible says and engage in the most rigorous way they can with biblical studies and with historical critical methods and so on.
Yes.
And language studies and the latest developments in archaeology and so on and so forth. So immediately I'm suspicious because there is a middle ground and it is possible to take, from my experience, to take historical critical concerns very seriously whilst believing that the Bible is true in what it says. And we know that's true in terms of scholarship as well, don't we, Sam? I mean, I think you have a couple of examples there, but the market's flooded with commentaries by Bible-believing Christians who are academics who do serious historical critical study and engage with all the kind of background issues that Ehrman's referring to in a rigorous way, but they believe it's true.
I mean, this is your standard type of commentary you'll get in a Christian bookshop. You know, they're like a brick and they go through all the historical critical questions at the start before they even get to the text. They'll establish the text. They'll look at the history. They'll do all of these types of things, but it's a devotional book. So yeah, it's just a complete false distinction that he's making there. And the things about the historical critical method and archaeology, a lot of archaeology that's been done has confirmed the Bible. So, the latest research in biblical archaeology confirms the Bible. It doesn't negate the Bible, but he's not giving that impression, Now he says that a lot of Christians don't know this material. And I want to say, in one sense, yes, that is true. But if you drive a car, do you fully understand how your car works? Not everyone knows everything about the field that they're involved in. And so there are Christians who know, the basics about their faith. There are other Christians who know a lot more about their faith. But that's just a normal human thing. As I said, if you drive a car, how much of the car do you understand compared to an expert in that area? But you still drive the car. The car's still good. How much you know about it isn't the deciding factor. He talks about students having a rude awakening, and I think you've already picked that up, that wasn't really our experience at college. We saw that the historical critical method was a useful one for understanding the Bible better. Anyway, how about we move on to the next quote there? So you're going to do our next quote for us, I think, on page 4.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot of these things come up time and time again, aren't they?
Yeah.
But so moving on to the next bit. Ehrman says, the approach taken to the Bible in almost all Protestant and now Catholic mainline seminaries is what is called the historical critical method. It's completely different from the devotional approach to the Bible one learns in church. The devotional approach to the Bible is concerned about what the Bible has to say, especially with what it has to say to me personally or to my society. What does the Bible tell me about God, Christ, the church, my relation to the world? What does it tell me about what to believe, how to act, and so on and so forth? Yep. The historical critical approach has a different set of concerns and therefore poses a different set of questions. At the heart of this approach is the historical question, hence its name, of what the Bible writings meant in their original historical context. Who were the actual authors of the Bible? Is it possible, yes, that some of the authors of some of the biblical books were not, in fact, who they claimed or were claimed to be? Say that 1 Timothy was not written by Paul, that Genesis was not written by Moses. When did these authors live? What were the circumstances under which they wrote? And so on. He asks more questions, basically.
Yes.
What do you think, Sam?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, you're right. He's just sort of going over the same ground over and over from different angles. But again, that is a false distinction. As I pointed out, your standard evangelical devotional commentaries go through all those issues. They look at the exact points that he was bringing up there about, what can we know about the date of composition? What can we know about the authorship? And they do all of that. So it's just a false dichotomy that he's making here, that there's devotional and academic reading. In practice, we do ask those questions. Not every Christian may be aware of the discussion, but within the community, the evangelical devotional community, we do ask those questions. So,
and a key difference, just quickly, that he's touched on here is, and he isn't explicit about this, but it's his attitude towards historical critical method. That is, are you looking for plausible historical explanations that support the Bible, or are you approaching it with a skepticism that really wants to find any hole possible to claim that it's all discredited and all untrue? And as we keep reading, it becomes pretty clear that Ehrman takes a very skeptical approach, which isn't a sound approach to history. Basically, history wouldn't exist if we did that with every text. But let's move on.
Yes. Okay. I will continue with the next lot of readings. So this is from page 5. A very large percentage of seminarians are completely blindsided by the historical critical method. They come in with the expectation of learning the pious truths of the Bible so that they can pass them along in their sermons as their own pastors have done for them. Nothing prepares them for historical criticism. To their surprise, they learn instead of material for sermons all the results of historical critics, of what historical critics have established on the basis of centuries of research. The Bible is filled with discrepancies, many of them irreconcilable contradictions. Moses did not write the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Old Testament. Matthew, Mark, and Luke and John did not write the Gospels. There are other books that did not make it into the Bible at one time or another that were considered canonical. Other Gospels, for example, allegedly written by Jesus' followers, Peter, Thomas, and Mary. I mean, I'll skip over. What have I got here? So some students accept these new views from day one. Others, especially among the more conservative students, resist for a long time, secure in their knowledge that God would not allow any falsehood into his sacred book. But before long, as students see more and more of the evidence, many of them find that their faith in the inerrancy and absolute historical truthfulness of the Bible begins to waver. There simply is too much evidence and to reconcile all of the hundreds of differences between the biblical sources requires so much speculation and fancy interpretive footwork that eventually it gets to be too much for them. Well, he's really going for it in that reading.
It's inevitable. Bow down to the weight of evidence. Yeah. It's again, we touched on it, but he does present it as there's been this 300 years of upward climb, upward ascent in knowledge of the Bible, and there's no ditches or bad alleys that's turned down. It's just an upward ascent. But the reality is historical critical theories about who wrote 1 Timothy and whether Ephesians was really written by Paul or whatever it is, there's all these questions people raise, and they're good historical questions to raise. But the theories that people were very confident about 2 generations ago, they're not confident about now.
Exactly.
Historical critical theories come and go. And some of the things that Ehrman holds very dear and as absolute truth now as just information that everybody should believe about the Bible, in 2 generations' time, many of those will be ridiculed and seen as not historically credible anymore. So it really comes down to the details. We need to engage, as Ehrman's going to go into, we need to look at the examples he raises and things he says are contradictions or aren't historically credible and and see if his reasoning is convincing or not, which is where we're going to head, of course, isn't it, Sam?
Yes, yeah, it is. And, he was saying about the 300 years, building up of the 300 years. And just as you said that there were ideas that people have had in the past, which they no longer hold, there's been archaeology where where people have said these locations where Jesus was, or this pool where Jesus did this healing, they don't exist. We don't have any evidence for them. And then we do dig them up. We do find them. And
Mm-hmm.
so ideas that were once certain and shaped the consensus of scholarship have been rejected. And so,
if you approached it in the first place with less skepticism and
yes,
more looking for whether there's a plausible explanation, there wouldn't have been the historical problem in the first place, because a lack of evidence isn't disproof in that domain. Yeah.
All right. Well, look, we're going to finish up this episode, and we're going to begin in our next. We're going to continue in our next episode with the examples that he starts to give, and we're going to begin with Jesus cleansing the temple and the points that he makes about that and the contradictions that he wants to say that are there. So we'll see you in our next